Bad literally means something has been made to a poor quality or low standard, and this is something that unfortunately crops up quite a bit in the video game industry. Recently, if you weren't aware, I actually did a 5-hour-long livestream where I exclusively focused on playing pretty crappy racing games. Wasn't intended to be 5 hours long, that was just kinda how it ended up to be. Here are the suspects that appeared during that livestream. First of these was the Fast and the Furious Drift arcade machine developed by Raw Thrills in 2007. Yeah, this doesn't look like a 2007 game, but this was made in 2007. Supposedly a tie-in game to the Tokyo Drift movie, despite having barely any resemblance at all to the actual game. It does feature some of the cars and a couple of the locales from the Fast and Furious universe, but On top of that, it's an arcade game, meaning that the game is designed to get as many coins out of you as possible. Like a lot of arcade games, this does actually give you a free play if you win. However, that's a little bit more insidious than you think, because the game is quite literally rigged for you to lose most of the time. There is an invisible number, literally hitting in the game, that tracks a percentage rate as to whether or not the game thinks you should win. And there actually is a difficulty number that can be set within the game itself to determine how much that sort of swings. If it's on a harder difficulty, it's a lot less likely that you'll win. If it's on an easier difficulty, it's a bit more likely. And every time you do get a win, that number will plummet and will steadily build up again every time you lose. There's a bit of extra deviousness to the game, and that is how you lose. I'll just show this clip. I don't think I need to put any more explaining than that. Hit another boost. We got the end. Oh no! No! After that, we jumped across to Maxed Out Racing, a game so terrible that my actual physical copy that I had for the PS2 worked literally once and then never again. The only way I was able to ever make any real progress on this game was actually coming back to it many years later through emulation, and, well, I wasn't really missing out on much, that's safe to say. Oh, he's crashed! He hit the traffic car. Can I avoid me? No, I'm gonna meet the same fate! The next suspect on the list was none other than Kart Fury. Yes, based off of the real-life racing series Kart that lasted through the 90s and into the early 2000s. This was during the decline of Kart, and it's safe to say this was the wrong game at the wrong time to help save Kart's desperate declining prospects. All things considered, though, while it doesn't really have much of a resemblance other than, like, the drivers and some of the track locales to the actual Kart Championship, this is actually a pretty fun arcade racer. I can't really complain too much about it. But it was more just unfortunate circumstances, I think, that really sort of plunged this game down the gutter. And given the fact that it was a officially licensed product, I think there were some expectations of something a bit more grounded and realistic, especially with kind of some of the initial presentation of the game, to then have it be something that was so very blatantly arcade and just outright crazy that it just didn't really line up. I'm actually going to skip over the next two. You can look at the live stream if you want to see the full list of games of me playing them. But I didn't really think there was anything really interesting to talk about with those, because with their own circumstances and merits considered, those two games weren't really, I would call, bad. They're just kind of mediocre games that existed. But the last one here is another arcade title, a pretty obscure Sega Model 2 arcade title. So this is really old hardware here. So actually, while the graphics may not look too up to scratch, these actually are pretty reasonable for the time. It's actually not too bad. But obviously, it's an arcade game. It's designed to steal your monies. It's actually not too bad on that front, really. But the main thing with this game is just the physics are not particularly great. Cars bounce off of objects really funkily and off each other, and it's not the most pleasant racing game to play, and some of the ways in which you actually need to handle the car are a bit obtuse. And not to mention that given it's a arcade game of the period, it is pretty dry on content, which definitely doesn't help it as being a game that you want to keep playing over and over and over again. I think that this game is appropriate for players of all ages. As he crashes his GTR into a wall. Oh, he crashed into another wall. And... oh, he's got it back at the... oh, he's crashed into another wall. And another wall. And another wall. And another. So why on earth did I livestream for 5 hours, and why on earth did I cherry pick these games specifically? Well, the answer to that question is pretty straightforward. It's because I either enjoy or think these games are interesting in one way, shape, or form. And I think, having a bit of enjoyment or passion towards games that aren't quite as well regarded, whether that be objectively or by general community opinion, I think is a pretty healthy thing to have. But why do I think it's healthy? Well, the only thing that really matters when playing video games is fun. That should be the only thing that matters. We play video games as entertainment. They are supposed to entertain us. And, the video game doesn't have to be good to be entertaining. Obviously, some of these games are bad. As you see in some of these clips, I was laughing my head off at the game doing absolutely terrible things. And that can be amusing. And in general, while these games may be shrouded by terrible things, for example, the Fast and Furious games being the racing game equivalent of a slot machine, I can't deny that the crazy styling of the vehicles and the sort of ridiculous over-the-top nature of the racing in the game isn't oddly captivating. It's obviously nothing that's going to blow my brain, but it's just silly fun, and I think that's something that we really need to keep at core when playing video games. Not every game is going to be a masterpiece, and that's okay. That's a good thing. Not every game should be a masterpiece, because if every game was a masterpiece, then nothing would be a masterpiece. And I think this does also point to a bit of a trend I've been seeing lately online, where people have sort of been clutching at straws to try and find the silver bullet that'll redeem this game, to make it a truly underrated, underappreciated gem. But do we really need to find that? I mean, yeah, obviously it makes a game easier to talk about and to sell to people. If a game has something that is a bit out of the ordinary, something that will provide a bit more of a unique experience. But if you like a game and it doesn't really have a silver bullet, there's nothing wrong with that. People can say a game is terrible all they want. And if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. It doesn't matter. However, we do obviously still have to be kept in reality. You can't just deny everyone's criticisms for the game, obviously provided they are valid, because, well, the game still has flaws. I mean, some of my favorite games, even not just talking about bad games, even my favorite games, I understand their flaws within them, because they are still flaws. They are things that do somewhat hinder the experience beyond what I would want, and they may hurt a new player's experience coming into the game. Obviously, when we're talking about worse games, these are going to be a lot more prevalent and a lot more obvious to new players, and could very easily turn them away, especially if we don't really talk about them much. And so, I think we do have to keep this sort of key balance up between the game is bad, but it is fun. And that is a very hard balance to strike, obviously, on the internet, on conversation, due to, obviously, how the internet likes to be very for or against something. There isn't really much of an in-between spot in the internet. We can't really turn around and be like, this game is great, but also not. We have to be, this game is either the best thing ever, or it's the worst thing ever. And, I get why the internet is like that, but I think we should also try moving away from that. It's a lot more healthier to acknowledge a game is bad, but still enjoy it for what it is. As I said earlier on, the only thing that really matters when you play games is fun. Fun should be the core factor that drives everything. And this obviously applies both ways. If you enjoy something, you enjoy something. Keep enjoying it. But if you don't enjoy it, or you stop enjoying it, then that's also fine. You feel free to put the game down and never think about it or touch it again.